Welcome everybody to this episode of VISTV. I'm Joan Viscardi, and as you can see, I am in a different place today. I am back in my physical office of Viscardi, and happy to say that I am. If you're distracted by the poster behind me, it is a vintage medical poster teaching people about the teeth. Luckily, mine is not in front of the GI tract, the intestinal tract, the valves of the heart. I chose the teeth, and I think it's appropriate because it has to do with oral. And here I am speaking to all of you. But I'm very honored today to have Danielle Powers, who is the Executive Assistant and Talent Enablement Lead at Compass Group USA. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, and so happy to have you here. So we have a lot to talk about today. We've had some preliminary conversations. I always meet my guests, and I thought I come on a certain track of where I'm going to go, but you really are very special. And I think it will be important for the listeners and the viewers who come to watch VISTV to really hear the things you have to say about integrating in the workplace mental health, as well as women and the needs of women who go out on maternity leave, come back after maternity leave. So let's get started. You are a mental health first aider. Can you tell me what that is and why you pursued that?
Absolutely. So it's something that I actually had never even heard of until the opportunity kind of fell into my inbox. One of the executives that I support works out of our UK office in Chertsey, right outside of London. And that office group had a huge initiative about mental health and supporting mental health in the workplace. And this first aider certification course became available. And if you think about any kind of first aid, it's exactly that. And there are all of these first aid classes that we can take for our bodies. You don't really think about mental health, but mental health is connected to physical health. It's all ingrained in each other. So when this opportunity came up, I kind of raised my hand and said, can I be involved? And at the time, not realizing that it would be UK time zone. So I was getting up at 4 a.m. to take this class. It was a 5-day course, and I believe it was 2 hours every morning. So from 4 to 6 or 5 to 7, depending on the day, I was talking about mental health over my cup of coffee before heading into the office. And I just thought that it was so important, the steps that are recommended to take, where being a mental health first aider is not at all about giving advice. I mean, we never want to give advice. We're not doctors. We're not specialists of any kind. It's all about listening. And these days, especially given the last year that we've had, listening to each other is just so important. You never know what someone is going through. And sometimes all someone needs is an ear. And that's what I really got out of this certification. And I'm so proud to have a little emblem in my LinkedIn profile, because it is something that is very near and dear to my heart, to kind of taking care of the person in the workplace and not just from a work standpoint. You know, we're all people that have personal lives, that no matter how much we've been told to keep the personal out of the professional, the personal away from the workplace, it's just impossible, especially given the last year that we've all had, where, I mean, if you say that you didn't struggle through a lockdown and a pandemic and pivoting in every single way that we've pivoted, like, it's like either kudos to you or just it's time you start telling the truth, because I just can't imagine how that could be possible.
You know, it's interesting you say that. We at Viscardi, you know, I think primarily because we're a team of medical professionals, decided early on in the pandemic that mental health was top notch. It was a top need. Not so much how are we going to work remotely, but how are we going to support our team mentally? So we provided mental time off, we call it, MTO, go do something for you, but also to encourage people to have that time to step away from the stressors and strains of just what's going on. And we don't always get to do that. And I think, women historically haven't gotten to do that. I have concerns for women, but that's a topic for a whole nother day, that have gone back to the workplace, being at home and having all those responsibilities. Do you work under the auspices of HR? And do many people come to you? How do they find you? How
So
do you offer that?
I'm not under the HR umbrella at all. I support the sales team and the growth team. So it's actually interesting that you asked that, because there's a second part of the class that where all of those of us who got this certification, we're going to come back together. I believe the last opportunity for the certification is in November. So it's probably going to be soon that all of us come together. I think there were 6 different classes. And we're going to talk about how to sort of advertise ourselves as mental health first aiders and what that will look like. So I'm very interested to see, I'm interested to see the response, if people will start coming to me, to any of us. So TBD on that, because at this point now, I've just been kind of putting it out there to my managers, to the his senior leadership team, just saying like, hey, this is something that I did. Let's think about how we might want to put it out there that I am here if anybody wants.
Yeah, it's so valuable. I think in any service anyone provides is one, many people receive certifications, but then what do you do with it? How do you integrate it into the workplace? How do you build it as part of the culture? Kudos to Compass Group, because they have also been recognized recently for being one of the top places for women to work. So bravo, bravo to them.
It is such a great place to work. I worked for one of our sectors in New York for about 3 years, and stepped away into a different role at another company for a while, and then had the opportunity to move down to Charlotte to work for our Compass North American headquarters in the role that I'm in now, supporting the head of sales. And I have to say, I've worked a few different places in the last, when did I graduate from college? 2007. So that's what, 14 years. Some cultures are just so toxic, and I've worked in them, and you don't realize how toxic they are until you are in a culture that really appreciates their people. And I truly wouldn't ever want to work anywhere other than Compass. This is not an advertisement to come work at Compass. I mean, you saw that I'm a talent enablement lead for the sales team, but
that's a great line though. But I hear what you're saying. Yes,
it's truly how I feel. And sorry, my coffee maker just went off in the background.
That's okay. We all need that support too.
But no, I do love working with Compass, and I feel very, very fortunate to be part of the team. And I do think that the award was well earned.
Well, I'd like to talk about, we spoke earlier and you said you were comfortable doing it. And I think it's really important, an important segue from mental health is your own mental health and the situation that you were part of in the workplace, how you became interested in this journey and what precipitated this journey, and what we could do, I think, as a society, but me, myself, as a leader to help support people. Talk a little bit about what got you here. Yeah. Why are you up at 4 o'clock in the morning, not just for lessons in mental health aider?
Yeah, so I became a mom in 2020. My son Julian just turned 1 a month ago.
Congratulations.
So he's 13 months. Thank you. So I truly did have a pandemic pregnancy, where found out I was pregnant in January of 2020 and just started telling people kind of that first week of March 2020. And a week later, everything shut down and the world really started to change in a way that none of us ever could have foreseen, especially in family planning. So I was working from home all through my pregnancy, which of course had some benefits where I could wear stretchy pants all day, every day. I could just roll out of bed and over to my computer and not have to care about any of the other aesthetic stuff. But it was very, very isolating to be pregnant with our first child during a pandemic when we were not seeing family, we were not seeing friends. I was growing and growing and growing, and my husband and I were celebrating amongst ourselves, but we really were not able to celebrate this huge life event with any friends or family. So that was hard enough. Then giving birth at a time where there were so many unknowns. So Julian was born in September when numbers were just starting to creep back up again. And then we were in an isolated maternity leave. So it just was something that it's almost inexplicable what we've been through. And on top of that, despite all of my efforts to prepare for everything, as I tend to do, I did end up with some significant postpartum depression that, you know, we had talked about it beforehand, because I do have friends who have dealt with it as well. And we were prepared, where we knew that it could happen. I don't think we were actually prepared for it to happen, where there are the baby blues in that first week that are very, very normal, but then they start to subside. So when you start to notice kind of this uncontrolled rage or self-hatred in new motherhood, it's really scary. And even though we were educated about postpartum depression, we were prepared for it, I didn't really put it together that that's what it was until we were at Julian's 1-month visit with his pediatrician. And in that first month, there are so many pediatrician visits. You're there weekly up until the first month. And I was fortunate enough that our practice did have me fill out a survey at each visit about my mental health as a new mom. And at that 1-month visit, our doctor definitely noticed some changes in my answers. And we had a very, very thoughtful conversation with our pediatrician, who was just unbelievable in his support. And he provided support resources. And then I think that day I reached out to a therapist friend in Charlotte who connected me with one of her therapist friends who specializes in maternal mental health. And so that was exactly a year ago, actually, because I remember it was right before Halloween that I had my first therapy session. And it's been a struggle. I am feeling great now, a year later. I'm feeling absolutely great, but there are days where you kind of backslide. And I remember when that first happened, a couple months into therapy, and I was sitting in my therapist's office crying, saying, you know, I felt like I was getting better. Why am I here again? And she said, you can only backslide if you've made progress. And that has stuck with me even today. If something were to kind of trigger me a little bit and I kind of go back into that place, I can remember I'm only feeling this now because I've made progress. So maternity leave for me was 14 weeks. I had 12 weeks paid leave, and then I tacked on another 2 weeks of my vacation time to that. So I was going back. So here we are a year later, and I'm still talking about the daily struggles with postpartum depression. I was going back to work 3 months in to that journey, or really 2 months in, because it wasn't until
You hadn't started therapy.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I made the decision on day one back at the office. I was still working remotely, but I was back at work, that I was going to just be honest with the 2 executives that I support and tell them.
Were you afraid of being honest?
No, because I knew that I had the relationship with both of these guys that I could be honest. They're amazing men, amazing leaders, and again, very fortunate to support such wonderful people. But I was not nervous about being honest. The one thing that I was maybe slightly questioning was if they'd get it, as men. They both have wives, they both have children. But it was kind of like, because there were some instances where I told some people that I was struggling with postpartum depression or being treated. I hate saying struggle with postpartum depression, but we're so accustomed to calling depression a struggle.
That's interesting you say that, because you
Yeah,
don't usually hear someone say, I'm struggling with diabetes.
right.
I'm
But I know
struggling with hypertension. They say, I have.
yes,
And they almost say it with a badge of honor, like,
right.
I have diabetes, I have
Yeah. And
hypertension.
let me say I have postpartum depression with a huge badge of honor, because it just speaks to everything that we go through. But gosh, I completely lost my train of thought, because that was such a good point that you've just made. But so when I went to tell them, that's right. Other people that I told outside of work, just in my personal life, when I first was diagnosed with postpartum depression, I said, this is what we're dealing with. And some of the reactions were, why are you sad? It's like, well, I'm not sad, actually. I'm very happy. I have this beautiful, healthy baby. I have a loving husband. I have a great home. And yet here I am still with these intrusive thoughts and these horrible feelings. So no, I'm not sad. I do have everything I could want. Thank you for pointing that out again. Let's make me feel worse about what I'm going through. And if anyone who said any of those things to me happens to watch this, that's not to make anyone feel guilty. It's just the reality, right? Where it's just what we're accustomed to do.
Well, and it's also a lack of understanding.
Exactly. And
And
that
I'm
all
so
goes back to
grateful for
why.
Yeah, having this conversation. This conversation is so necessary, because
Absolutely.
Postpartum depression has come with a stigma outside of the workplace. So I can't even imagine the stigma that some people feel in the workplace. How do you take yourself, especially, you mentioned a couple things, that you're living in an isolated world to begin with. We're dealing with a pandemic that nobody knew was coming, and we didn't know how to deal with it. We weren't given the tools, whether it's at home, in the workplace, wherever. Look at children in schools. We weren't given the tools of how to operate. So what you're talking about is so important. So please continue as to what did the workplace do for you, and where and how did you find your support? And how do we help those who may be watching not feel that stigma?
Yeah. So with one boss that I told, he just said, whatever you need, you take the time that you need. You don't need to tell me if you're going to see your therapist or the doctor, or if you're going to be late on lines one day, you just very much whatever you need. The other gentleman that I support was very proud of me for getting the help that I need and telling him about it. He said that it makes him really mad that people don't talk about depression as a disease, and that there is stigma to getting help. So there were two levels of really amazing understanding that I got from both of the gentlemen that I support. One, you do what you need. I am here for you. Take the time, do what you need. And the other one said, I understand this. I understand this depression, and I'm mad that more people aren't doing what you've done. So good for you. So I really can't imagine a better situation in telling my management what I was going through. And they weren't all talk. It's truly been, that's the case, where I will text my boss. If I'm on my way to therapy, now I'm going back to the office. So if I'm on my way to therapy before going to work and my boss texts me to do something, I'll say, running into therapy, will be in the office in an hour and 15 minutes. And it's just, no questions asked. There's no, rolling of the eyes, like, oh, she's doing that again, or oh, isn't she better by now? No, it's something that we talk about. And I will talk to him about things that I learn and tools that I've become equipped with in therapy that he's then able to use. He's not dealing with postpartum depression. He is, in the sense that he works very closely with me and it's something that I'm going through. But he's able to take things that I learn in therapy and use it in his business, in the way that he manages people. And it just goes to show that whether you have depression, postpartum depression, mental illness, everyone can use therapy. It's so amazing. I'm such a huge proponent for therapy. I have no trouble saying, well, my therapist said, or in therapy I talked about, or even the other day I said, something happened where my boss and I were laughing about like some ridiculous response to something that we were dealing with. And I said, man, all I can say is thank goodness for therapy and medication. And he just laughed, and it's just like, yeah, because why? Like, certain things that might have sent me over the edge beforehand, now I have the tools to deal with. And I I hate that I spent so many years, because even before postpartum depression, I now realized that I had horrible anxiety and it just was not being treated in any way. And now that it is, it's like, man, I can't believe I lived so long thinking that was normal. That was a normal reaction to stress. Like, oh, I'm not supposed to have the room spin, my head pound, feel like I'm going to throw up, have my hands tingle when something stressful happens. Everybody doesn't have that reaction. What?
It's so interesting that you say that, because when you think about us as a society, the United States is a very young society, and I wonder if that has something to do with it. We're also a society of mixed people who come in with different traditions, different cultures. So we're raised, we can go down the ancestral lines of so many people, and it's different things that come in to raise us. I myself has recently started therapy, and I'm so much older than you. But part of my conversation often with the therapist is, why isn't this part of our norm? Why isn't it part of our education from a young age? Education is focused on the mind. The mind is what is struggling oftentimes with mental illness. You mentioned anxiety, depression. It's huge. And we need to just have it more in the conversation. We have mental issues, everybody. There is no one that can't have something imparted on them, on the way they see the future, the way they see the present, or the way we take the trauma from the past.
Yeah.
And we carry it with us. So it's so important. I'd like to just say right now, bravo to the leaders of Compass for listening and hearing you. It's not just the hearing. They really listened to what you said.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine. I know the company has a tremendous employee count that this will eventually, after you determine when you have your TBD meeting on what you're going to do with these certifications, you will impact the people of that company. And it's really kudos to you too, Danielle, to having the bravery to come forward to talk about something that's really so important. How do you even go to work? You spend a majority of your day, we all do. It almost hit me in the face one time when someone said, you're at work more than you are at home. And I thought, that's not true. Can't be possible, till you count the hours and you think, wow.
The actual waking hours. Yeah.
The waking hours, that this becomes your family, it becomes the positive and negative sides of what we do daily. So it's huge. And I think it's very important that you be in the best place possible. I remember I was diagnosed with hypertension and I went on medication. And then I was hospitalized for something else. And they said, you have hypertension. And I'm a nurse, you think this is like logical. No, I don't anymore. I'm treated for it. You always have it. We always have the diagnosis if it's proper and appropriate for the rest of our lives. And it's what makes us all society we are.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with any of it. I think it's so easy to say if someone's acting in a way that you, society, whomever doesn't deem appropriate, it's so easy to say, oh, well, they're mentally ill. Like, okay, I'm mentally ill. If you actually want, I have a mental illness. And I don't think that, walking around on the street out and about in my daily life, anyone would look at me and say, she's mentally ill.
Yeah.
But I'm in treatment for a mental illness. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Like, hi, I'm here. I'm what mental illness looks like. Like, it's not all mental illness, of course, but my mental illness looks like this.
Right.
And it's fine. And I'm a happy, functioning person who just happens to have a little bit more to deal with on a daily basis that I'm being honest about. Because again, it goes back to, let's start telling the truth about, are we fine? I was listening to Glennon Doyle's podcast, We Can Do Hard Things, and it's amazing. And they were talking about how we are so conditioned to say, I'm fine, from a very young age. A kid falls, scrapes his knee. What do we say? You're fine, you're fine, you're fine. I don't want to deal with your crying. You're fine. I'm going to tell you you're fine. So we're most likely to say, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, in moments that we're not. And Glennon's sister Amanda said, you might as well say I'm yellow. It has the same meaning to say I'm fine.
Right.
And it's just like, how about we stop saying we're fine?
Yeah. It comes from fear.
Yeah.
It comes from fear of parents, from educators, fear of society, that we want everyone to be fine. I think the pandemic taught us we're not fine.
Yeah.
We're not fine externally. We're not fine internally. There's so much that isn't fine. And I think what you're doing is helping everyone learn we're not fine. And it's okay. It's okay. And it's okay in the workplace where you are spending most of your day to recognize that the people may be sitting at the other desk or now the other side of a Zoom or a virtual meeting, they may not be fine. It's really important. We can't have enough empathy, I think, in society. We gave it away a long time ago. We tried to empower ourselves that I don't want to see somebody else's pain. I just have to go. I have to do. It's so important to really look in the eyes of the person that's across from you. And I see you as such a mentor to others and a really strong person, because it's only a strong person that can look in the mirror and see themselves. And to your employers, it's just amazing, amazing.
Thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. I mean, I've been through a lot physically, mentally, at a young age. And I think that, you don't become resilient by never feeling pain. You become resilient through struggle. And empathy is so important. And it's something that I would love to teach my son. It's one of the most important things that my husband and I want him to be, an empathic person. But the other side of it is empathy is feeling what other people feel. It's not sympathy. There's the difference there.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to be empathic, you have to have felt pain. And you, like you said, you can never know what someone is going through. And if someone is not performing in their job the way that they had in the past, and you just want to be, it's an inconvenience to you. They're not performing, they're slow to respond, you're just not getting what you need from them. It's an inconvenience to me getting my job done, and there's an annoyance there, when really, how about we say, like, hey, you're not acting or performing the way that I'm used to from you. Is everything okay?
Right.
And you may be surprised at the impact that question has. is everything okay? I remember I suffered a miscarriage a few years ago, and it was maybe a month afterwards. And I know that I was not slacking. That is not the right word. I wasn't performing my job up to my standard of what I was capable of, and what historically I've put out there. And there was a little bit of that where I could tell that people were getting frustrated with me. And finally I said, like, you know, I had this miscarriage. I know it's in the rearview mirror for you, but for me, it is still very, very present. I am still dealing with this, and I can't tell you when I will be over it. But for right now, it's a struggle every day. And that was one of the biggest eye openers for me of, you never know what someone's going through. Even when you think you do, you still never can truly know. So that empathy in the workplace is just so important in life, in society.
Exactly. And I think we have to look at life, whether it's in the workplace or home, personal, interpersonal. It's not a struggle, it's a journey. You know, we're on a journey all together. You know, we're on a journey, and it's important that we all know everybody's roads are a little bit different. They take different directions. The quality of the road could be really different. And I really can't thank you enough for sharing your personal journey that you're on. I think it's really, really important for everybody to hear it.
I'm happy to share it. So thank you for listening to it.
It's been an honor, truly been an honor. And I hope all of the future journeys you take will be of empowerment for yourself, because I know they're going to empower others. And big kudos again to Compass for what they've done, not just on the award. That award tenfold is in allowing their employees to really speak the truths. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.